Welcome to this video on randomized block design. In this video, you are going to learn how to describe or design completely a randomized experiment and describe a randomized block design and a matched pairs design for an experiment and be able to explain the purpose of blocking in an experiment. So what we have here is we have a similar story of what we talked about the other day about the SAT prep matter. So EHS has decided to offer an SAT prep class again this year. It will be offered in two different formats, online or classroom teacher. The counselors want to know which teaching method will yield higher SAT scores, so they have allowed us to set up an experiment. 50 students have signed up to take some form of the SAT prep class. So we have 20 seniors and 30 juniors. So these are our experimental units. These are who we're going to be talking about. So we have our experimental units, and then we have two treatments that are going to be going on because we have the online and the face-to-face for the teaching method. So we have online and classroom teachers. So these are our treatments. I'll just put TX for treatments. All right, so I want you to pause the video and I want you to outline just a completely randomized design. We've done this several times now, and come back and see how you did and see if you managed to get everything into your design. Pause the video and give it a try now. All right, so let's take a look. For this to be a completely randomized design, we're going to get an SRS of 50 students total. And so that's what we had happening up here. We have some sort of random assignment. We're not really describing what's going on here, but think about how you could do it also. It's always good to be able to explain it. That might be something that comes up. Because we have 50 students, you want to try and make equal groups as much as possible. We're going to put 25 online. That'll be your for treatment 1, and 25 will go into the classroom. So if you label these differently or you put classroom on top and online on the bottom, it doesn't matter. The important part is that you have two treatments and you have 25 people in each group. All right. You might not have put that they take the SAT, but ultimately that's what's really going to happen is we want them to take the SAT, and then we're going to have them compare their scores. So that's what we were talking about before. But the counselors at EHS hypothesize that the online versus classroom results could be greatly affected by the grade level of the student. So they're thinking there's a particular variable that could cause an issue here. So they know seniors generally score better on the SAT than juniors. How could we adjust our experiment to ensure that there is an even split of seniors and juniors in each class? So we're going to draw an outline of the experiment. So what we're going to do is we're going to create these groups. We're going to have a junior group and we're going to have a senior group. And you might be thinking to yourself, gosh, that sounds like a strata. And it is very similar to a strata, but strata is only for sampling. So maybe make a little note for yourself right here. Strata is sampling. What we're going to do is we're going to create a block of people, but it's the same idea. Okay, so blocks are for experiments. So we're going to start with our 50 students. Okay, so we have our SRS of 50 students. Now, we know, because we were told up here, there are 20 seniors and 30 juniors. So here we're going to split them. And this is not a random assignment because you are either a junior or a senior. There's nothing random about that. So we're going to come out and we're going to say we have 20 seniors and we have 30 juniors. It's not exactly half and half, but it's not too far off, so it's not too terribly bad. Okay, so these are what we call our blocks. So if you kind of think about it, I've created like this. Now, this is where your random assignment. From here out, It's just like we did here, but instead you have to do it twice because you're going to actually take these seniors and put some online and some in the classroom. And same with the juniors, some online and some in the classroom. So we're going to have at this point, just like we did up here, we're going to have a random assignment. And think about, label your seniors 1 to 20, the first 10 go to this group, the second 10 go, something along those lines. You're wanting to imagine how you could carry this out. And then from here, we're going to have 10 that go to the online class. And we call it online treatment 1, so I'm just going to keep it with the same. And we're going to have 10 that go to the classroom. So that's the 20 seniors that you got, half doing online, half in classroom, and we're going to do the same thing to the juniors. We're going to randomly assign the juniors to either the classroom or the online. So there's 30 of them, so we're going to get 15 to go online, and we're going to get 15 to go into the classroom. Okay, so then what's going to happen is we're going to come and we want them each to take the SAT. Okay. And then once they do that, we're going to make some comparisons. So the purpose of this is we were worried about the grade level causing some influence that might muddy whether the performance. What if you ended up with more seniors in the classroom, so maybe it didn't look as good for the online class. So what you've done is you've created these blocks to kind of help you, and then we can compare the seniors to the seniors, and then we can compare the juniors to the juniors, and then we can compare seniors and juniors based on their learning experience, their learning location. So it just helps wash out this difference back over here between the grade levels. Okay? So that is what we call a randomized block design. Randomized block design. So a block is just like a strata. You're breaking people apart based on some similar characteristic. But strata is only for sampling. We use the word block in experiments. We have our 50 students. There is no random assignment into a block because you are either a senior or a junior. You can't randomly do it. That's the whole point of this, is we want the seniors together, we want the juniors together. Then once you have your group, then you're going to random assign out of that, just like we did up in the randomized design. Okay, there's another method that I'd like to talk about, and that is called a matched pair. Okay, so we're going to have a matched pair design. So the counselors are now worried that a student's GPA is certainly going to affect their SAT score. And we can all kind of think of that. There's always a few people where GPA doesn't always match, but for the most part, you can have a good correlation between GPA and SAT score. So let's look only at the juniors right now. We want to be sure that the different GPAs are being evenly distributed into 2 treatment groups. How could we be sure that the GPAs are evenly distributed? So you got to kind of think about it. If we're only looking at these 30 juniors, maybe we need to go look at their GPA, and we can kind of match them. So we can put them in order based on their GPA. So let's start writing this down. All right, so I've got order students using GPA, and then I went on to say from least to greatest. You could do it greatest to least. I'm just kind of giving an order to help the reader understand what I'm talking about. So I've ordered the students from the lowest GPA to the highest GPA. Okay, so what am I going to do then? I'm going to take the 2 highest GPAs, Let me say this out and then we'll write it down. I'm going to take the two highest GPAs because those two people should be fairly similar because their GPAs are fairly similar. And I'm going to flip a coin and decide who goes into the online class and who goes into the classroom So let's put some words to that. All right, so let's see what we've got going on so far so we kind of have an idea. We're ordering the students. We're going to take the two highest GPAs because these two guys are similar somehow. Okay. And we're going to take these two people and we're going to do some sort of randomization. I said flip a coin. You could do a random number generator. So we're going to have some sort of random assignment right here. So that one goes to the online class and one goes to the classroom. So you could say, I have these two. I'm going to look at the highest GPA, flip the coin. If it's heads, they're in the online. If it's tails, they're in the classroom, and the other person goes into the opposite class. So at this point, once you're randomly assigning the first person, then the second person automatically goes into the other class. Now you have one person in each class with a very similar GPA. Then you're going to go to your next pair of people who will also have very similar GPAs, and you're going to do the same process, and you may end up signing different. You might get, instead of the first one going into online, the first one might go into the classroom. It's all about the random assignment right there. And so you're taking two very similar people and you're making some sort of random process as to which class they're getting. So you know you're matching an individual in each class with a similar characteristic of the GPAs at this point. Okay, so let's finish this out. So we're going to repeat, is what we said we were going to do, with the next two GPAs. And so on. Like, we could keep going, but this gives the reader the idea that we're going to go through the whole list of matching these two people together with very similar GPAs and then randomly decide who gets which classroom. Okay, and so on until all the juniors have been assigned to a group. Okay, so a matched pairs is a way to control for a variable, because you don't necessarily want to block on GPA. I mean, what do you say? We put the high GPAs in one box and the low GPAs in another box. GPA can really affect it. So what we want is some of all the GPAs in the online and some of all the GPAs in the classroom. Okay, so we kind of have it washed out there because they're very similar. So we're matching like people somehow. So these are two different individuals that we've matched. You can be your own match. I've heard of a research on deodorant where they used one person on two different deodorants. So one armpit was deodorant A and the other armpit was deodorant B, because that way you're matched, because your body should be somewhat similar in like its response to the deodorant on each side of your body. I've also seen where you can be your own matched pair, where they'll do their matched pairs, and the order in which you receive something can make a difference. So maybe you take your vitamin C pill and then eat a steak, and they check your vitamin C uptake, or you eat a steak, then take your vitamin C pill, and then check your vitamin C uptake and see if there's a difference in the order in which you take the medicine and the food. So there's different ways, but they're always talking about a pair, and they're talking about the order in which you receive a treatment can make a difference, because it can, especially with medicines, it could really make a difference. All right, so let's do some summary of these. These are kind of big ideas, and see how you're doing from there. So I've got two things that I want to tell you. They take up, it's about half and half, so you can plan your space accordingly. All right, so first, let us talk. Let me go ahead and just cover this up so it's not quite so overwhelming to look at all at once. All right, so we have a block. So a block is very similar to a strata. It's a group of experimental units that are known to be similar in some way. So strata, remember, is for sampling only. If you're talking about an experiment, we're talking about a block, but the idea behind them is the same. So the block of people are alike somehow. Then we use these blocks to build a randomized block design. So we're going to separate our subjects into blocks, and then we're going to randomly assign treatments within each blocks, and the blocks help minimize variability. That's our purpose for doing this, is we think this characteristic is going to make a difference, so we're going to block it out by making sure we have representation of whatever the block is in each of our treatments. Okay. Then we have our matched pairs experiment. So matched pairs experiments used to compare two treatments, and it uses blocks of size 2. And so we were taking the two people with the same GPA, we're saying that was a block, and we're just randomly assigning out of that. You have two very similar experimental units that are paired and then randomly assigned to a treatment. Okay, what I want you to do is I want you to try the check your understanding, pause the video. This is really, I mean, I know you can keep just playing the video, but what I want you to do is I want you to try it all on your own and then compare to what I've got, and that's where you learn, like, oh, I need to be sure I include this because what I have is what I'm looking for, and if you just copy it, you're not getting as much out of it as if you tried it and then edit what you did and do kind of an error analysis on your own work. So pause the video, give these 3 problems a try, and then let's come back and take a look at it. All right, so let's take a look. So they'd mentioned up here, so we're talking about researchers designing an experiment to compare the effectiveness of 3 different advertisements for a new television series featuring the work of Jane Austen. So there are 300 volunteers. So volunteers can create some bias. So that's why we're gonna need some random assignment here, because we got some bias going in, and sometimes you just, you get who you get for an experiment, and a lot of times they're volunteers. All right. So we have our 300 volunteers. So make sure you did not say this is an SRS, because we were told right here this was 300 volunteers. Okay, we're going to do a random assignment. And we had 3 different treatments, it said. We don't actually know what they are. So we just know we have group 1, group 2, and group 3. We want to put 100 students into each. Add 1, add 2, add 3. These are treatments. That's treatment 1, treatment 2, treatment 3. And then we're going to compare the effectiveness. Who knows how they would do that? Maybe they'd give them a survey or have a group discussion afterwards. I don't know. We don't need to know all of that. This is like your idea of this is how it could flow. So this is our completely randomized design. Okay, so now we're going to make a block design. And so coming up with the blocks can be hard, but I was thinking if people are familiar with Jane Austen, that could make a difference in their reaction to the different ads. So I went ahead and blocked, are they familiar with Jane Austen or are they not familiar with Jane Austen? So the hard part here is really coming up with, well, what could cause a difference in their response to the ads? So, if you have no idea who Jane Austen is, you will probably very likely act very differently than somebody who is like a huge fan of Jane Austen. So that will help us minimize the variability between these 2 groups and have a better understanding of their response to the ads. So we have our 300 volunteers. You cannot randomly assign into a block because you are in the block or you're not. Okay, so there's no random assignment here. We have familiar with Jane Austen, not familiar with Jane Austen. From your block, then you're going to randomly assign, and it turns into what we did up here. For each block, if you'll notice, we have this process repeated for each of the blocks. Okay, then we can make a comparison at the end, and we can see if people who are familiar with Jane Austen have a different response than the people who are not familiar with them. And if only the people who are excited about their advertising are from this block, well, maybe there's something wrong and they're not doing something to pull in those not familiar with Jane Austen. So it just gives them a better idea of if they're getting the information, or is what they're putting out there effective and working for everybody or only some of the groups. So you're reducing the variability with these blocks. Now, for our matched pairs, why might a randomized block design be preferable? Well, that's what we were just talking about. So the blocks will minimize the variability caused by those who are or not familiar with Jane Austen, because the ads can have a very different effectiveness based on the familiarity level. So if that inspired you, you should go watch some Pride and Prejudice or something. My personal favorite is Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. It sounded like it'd be terrible. Excellent movie. I love it. But I might be a fan of Jane Austen, so we don't know, do we? All right. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions.